topics and opinions expressed on the following show are solely those of the hosts and their guests and not those of W4WN Radio, its employees, or affiliates. We make no recommendations or endorsements for radio show programs, services, or products mentioned on air or on our web. No liability, explicit or implied, shall be extended to W4WN Radio, its employees, or affiliates. Any questions or comments should be directed to those show hosts. Thank you for choosing W4WN Radio.
This is Beyond Confidence with your host, Divya Parekh. Do you want to live a more fulfilling life? Do you want to live your legacy and achieve your personal, professional, and financial goals? Well, coming up on Divya Parekh's Beyond Confidence, you will hear real stories of leaders, entrepreneurs, and achievers who have stepped into discomfort, shattered their status quo, and are living the life they want. You will learn how relationships are the key to achieving your aspirations and financial goals. Moving your career or business forward does not have to happen at the expense of your personal or family life, or vice versa. Learn more at www.divyaparekh.com, and you can connect with Divya at contact@divyaparekh.com. This is Beyond Confidence, and now here's your host, Divya Parekh.
Good evening, listeners. So thrilled to be here with you. And I want to share that I want to thank you for your generosity in buying the books, especially Expert to Influencer and The Entrepreneur's Garden, because your generosity has helped us share the profits with entrepreneurs impacted by COVID-19. And I have an exciting announcement to make. So many of you have reached out to us over the course of past couple of months asking us about, Divya, you have written so many books, you've helped so many people write books. How about if you did a podcast on how to write your book? So folks, we will be talking about how to write your authority building book in 90 days. And when I talk about that, whether you are an entrepreneur, whether you are a professional, how do you write that story so that people recognize you and form that deep connection with you as you being their trusted advisor? And what is happening is that there's so many people who have become skeptical, and the skepticism gets in the way of people connecting with other people. They may find your credentials, and yet those credentials are doing nothing for you. Now, the key is that the book is an age-old, yes, it's an age-old medium that can build trust by providing massive value. So excited to share. We will be talking about that next week. So today, also, I want to start out with the story. It's a Zen story. And I love Zen stories. You probably may have heard. So there is this monk in the hills of Malaysia. I may be getting the country wrong, folks. So he is a very renowned monk, and people come from far and wide to learn from him. And there is this young gentleman, and he has done intense study for several years, and he thinks he has learned a lot. And then he has been debating, and his name's kind of getting out there. And then one day he was debating with another monk, and he was able to defeat the other monk in the debate. And of course, he was feeling very proud. And the other monk said, "Oh, you have not learned anything yet." And this guy said, "Oh," the first monk who had defeated the second monk said, "Oh, I just defeated you with my knowledge." And the second monk says, "You have got knowledge, but you are still lacking something. Your name is nowhere near as the monk in the hills." And of course, the young monk, very enthusiastic, very zealous, said, "I'm going to go challenge the other monk because I'll show him how much knowledge I have." And then he goes around, cannot find him, and then he keeps on going around asking people. and it's just very hard to reach him. Then finally, he's traversing through really hard paths and all that. And then finally, he finds this monk at the top of a hill. He's exhausted. He sleeps outside and decides to meet the monk the next morning. And then what happens is that the next morning, he's kind of fresh. He calls out the monk and says, "Hey, monk, come out. I'm here to debate you. I've heard that, you're very knowledgeable and you have this X, Y, and Z. I want to challenge you." And the second monk says, "So who's going to decide who has won?" And the first monk says, the challenging monk, "We will know. We're strong. And we can have an honor system where we will know who has not been able to answer a question. That person is defeated." So now they sit down, and the first monk who has challenged the second monk says that, "I'm going to pick a topic." And the second monk just sits there and smiles. And then, "I'm going to recite all my knowledge on it. And then you give your knowledge on the same topic and we'll ask each other questions. And whoever cannot answer the other person's question is going to be defeated." So the second monk is just kind of sitting there smiling. The first monk has not even asked if these rules are okay with the second monk. He picks up a topic and goes about it, goes on and on and on. And of course, he's feeling really good about it. Oh, he's looking around and, yeah, I'm so intelligent. I'm so knowledgeable. And then he looks at the other monk. The other monk doesn't say anything. And he says, "Oh, why aren't you sharing anything?" The second monk says, "You don't have any room to receive it." The first monk says, "What do you mean by that? That I don't have any room to receive what you're sharing?" And the second monk says, "Let me show it to you." And he gives a teapot to the second monk. To the first monk, sorry. The first monk who had challenged. So he gives him the teapot, and the second monk who was living on the hills, comes out with this teacup, which is completely full, and asks the first monk who has challenged the second monk, "All right, can you pour me some tea?" And the monk who has challenged the second monk looks at the cup of tea and says, "Your cup is full. How can I add anything to it?" And second monk says, "Exactly. You are already so full that there is no room to receive. So what am I going to share?" And the first monk realizes that in order to receive, you have to have an open mindset. You have to have a growth mindset where there is room for more learning. And then his head bows down and he tells, "I'm ready to receive. Will you be my teacher?" And of course, the story ends there, folks. And here is the thing, that life brings us so many different moments. Life is uncertain. So what is courage? Courage is not only facing the fear, but it's accepting that uncertainty, because uncertainty is the new name of a lot of things that are happening around us. Whether it's pandemic, whether it is social issues going on, whether it is economic issues going on. So when we bring that courage, that acceptance of things as they are, things change. Things absolutely change, folks. And today what we are going to do is, we are going to talk about influence. We are going to talk about how you can influence others, how you can design that life and your business of your dreams. So the first thing, folks, is to visualize. What does your ideal life look like? What does your ideal business look like? And that just doesn't mean, oh, I have this X, Y, and Z. It's about defining it to the T. It's about having so much clarity that you can see it. So, for example, I will share my dream that within the next 10 years, I want to impact a million people. And can I do it by myself? I can't. Now, can I do that through you? Sure. Because think about it. If you take even one thing that we have talked about, implement it in your life, and help somebody else, what is it going to do? You have impacted somebody else. And then that somebody else may have been impacted by what you shared, they impact somebody else. And that's how the ripple effect starts. Just imagine that calm lake. And when there is that calm lake, and what is happening is that you throw a tiny pebble. You see the ripples going far and out. So similarly, your actions can create influence. So the first thing that we talked about was having the clarity. What does your ideal life look like? What does your ideal business look like? So my business is that I want to help people. And then how do I want to help people? Through my messaging, through helping other entrepreneurs become successful, through helping other people share their story. Because think about it. Your voice is your brand. Your message that we can extract out of your story can become the survival guide for somebody else. You may think, oh, yeah, I overcame this. What's the big deal? But then there might be somebody else who's struggling with what's going on in their lives, what may be similar to yours. And if they were able to see what you had done in your life to overcome, then absolutely your story can become a message that can be a guide for them to survive. So that's the first thing, figuring out what is it that you want in your business in multiple areas of your life. So, okay, even in business, is it just about the money? How much money do you want to make? How many people do you want to impact? What kind of business do you want to run? What are your superpowers? How do you use your superpowers? And when I talk about superpowers, I'm not just talking about flying in the sky or being like another superhero or a Wonder Woman who can deflect the bullets. It's about that confidence. It's about what is it that you can do for someone else? Because in that lies the secret. When you're able to do something for someone and help them solve the problems, there's nothing more powerful than that, folks. So now what happens is, all right, you have got clarity in personal life too. So for example, I always recommend to my clients that design your business around your lifestyle. So first, think about what kind of life do you want? Do you want to just work 3 days a week? Do you want to work 7 days a week? Do you want to work 5 days a week? Do you want to travel? Do you want to have some new hobbies? Do you want to go on rock climbing? What is it that you want in your personal life? What does that ideal life look like? And when you know that, that's how you design your business around it. So, for example, I love nature walking. I love meditation. And I'm going to share a story about one of my clients who designed her life in such a way so that she could design her business around it. So she is a very high-powered entrepreneur, and she is making 7 figures. extremely, extremely smart. And what she loved to do was she loves the ocean. So she lives by the ocean and she likes to spend most of her time, as much time as possible, surfing, being outdoors, walking on the ocean, taking her boat out. So now, if that's the case, of course, on the ocean, you're not going to find Wi Fi. So, how can you design your business around it? We sat down and as we were talking, he said, how about if I only worked 4 days a week? He said, that's absolutely fine. You can do that. And what does she do? She is an accountant. So, what she used to do was initially she would help her clients with bookkeeping as well. And so she would take on a whole lot more, so she did not have time. So we sat down and we took a look at what was her time worth. Was it better to outsource what she did not like to do? And here's the thing, folks, whenever you're taking that step, fears are going to show up. But always remember, fears are for now. Right in this moment, because it's happening, you're experiencing that zone of discomfort. And because you're experiencing that zone of discomfort, you're not taking action. And because you're not taking action, nothing else is happening. Think about it. Taking action is a decision. Not taking action is a decision. Always remember, fears are for now and regrets are forever. If you don't do something, you'll always wonder, what if I had done that? So fine, if you do it and if you fail, jot it down. Failure is part of life. If you are not going to fail, then how are you going to learn? Failure is the learning ground. Failure is the breeding ground for opportunities, folks. So I'll share with you a story about Fabrice, and then we'll go back to my story of my client, the accountant. So Fabrice, when it came out, its purpose was completely different. And the company was trying to market it, nothing worked. And then one day, one of the sales rep was at a lady's house, and she said, oh, this smells so good. And then they did the studies and they found out that, oh, Fabrice had the power to kill odor releasing bacteria. And then they switched it. And the minute they switched it, Fabrice sales took off. There's another story, Kraft ketchup. So what was happening was they did the survey, they did lots and lots of customer question and answers, and they found that people love the product. They're like, why is the bottle not selling? They found that the hole from which, when you squeeze the ketchup, the hole of the bottle is small, so people just kind of take how much is needed. And they made the whole of that Kraft ketchup or some other ketchup bigger. And then what started happening was that when people started squeezing the ketchup out, more fell. And of course, it was always a tad little bit more than what they needed. And the product started selling. So there are stories after stories out there designing your business around your life. So same thing, finding out what is it that your customers need. And we sat down and we talked about, when I and my accountant sat down, that what was it that she was providing her customers? How was she serving them to the best of her ability? And what she found was that she was able to give them the strategies. That, okay, your business is working. So bookkeeper would do the bookkeeping where, the project is going on. So she would help the business owners segment their business into projects. So in the projects, how much money has come in, how much money has gone out, what are the profits, is the profit margin good? And she was a genius at that. And because she was genius at that, she said, I love doing that. And not only was she able to find money for her clients in their business, but she was also able to help them save the money and help them grow their business. So guess what? She decided that the best use of her time would be to consult with her clients rather than doing the bookkeeping. She hired a bookkeeper, and of course, she was scared. She was very scared to do that because now she's outsourcing. So that means she is spending a whole lot more money on that bookkeeper, because you have to hire somebody full time. You train them, so training takes time. But she leaned into her zone of discomfort and got in. Okay, and now what that did was, because she got out of day-to-day work, she was able to free up more time to do things that she liked to do, which was surfing, and also be able to find more prospects, be able to connect with them, be able to give them strategies, because the more freer your mind gets, the more creative it can get, and the more strategic it can start thinking. She would have calls, discovery calls with people, and give them a strategy or two that they could use in their business. No pressure on anyone about selling. They would go and they would come back that, oh, your strategy was so good. And then slowly what happened was she moved from 5 figures to 6 figures to 7 figures. It didn't happen in a day, folks. There are no shortcuts, but there are proven ways. And when we talk about proven ways, is what somebody else has done, what somebody else has failed at. And she was able to take that proven ways. And yes, it took time, but what would have taken her 20 years, she was able to achieve that in 7 years, which is a feat in itself. So as we were talking about designing your business and designing your life, it's about first clarifying how do you want your life to look like, and then designing your business around it. And when you do that, your joy never dries up. Your joy, and because there is consistent joy, your passion is consistently lit. And because your passion is lit, you're able to bring that across to your potential clients, to your clients, and you're able to serve them better. You are able to help them succeed. And if they succeed, you succeed. So that's one of the ways to design your life and design your business. So I'm going to share a few other stories. So one thing that I want to talk about is, what's important is that when you're designing, whether it's your business or your life, impacting others, it's so important, folks. Because when you're coming from a place of serving, when you are coming place of sharing, and when you are coming from a place where you want to help others, there's nothing more powerful than a thing. So I just want to read out to you a paragraph from my book, Expert to Influencer, and take it with you. So this is the time when our team, the book starts out, that the robotic team did not win the awards, had a lot of struggles. So there was a robotic team I had mentored, but then something happened, which I'll let you read in the book itself. And they were recognized. So I sat in my team and did not run down with them as they did high fives with the judges. I was soaking up the moment and feeling the ripple effect that started several years ago with these students. In 3 short years, the student leaders were making a difference for themselves and the team, and it got recognized. So folks, here's the thing. Business is not just about acquiring money. Life is not just about living. Life is about bringing life to life. And when does that happen? When it's not only you, when you take others. So I want to touch upon influence. An influencer is a rising tide that lifts all boats. Yes. You may say, oh, rising tide that lifts all boats. Think about it. If the gap between all of us. So, for example, I want to share with you a bright young student that I mentored. Phenomenal kid. And he was the first in his family to go to college. And he was so eager to go to college. And he signed up for a leadership program, and it was to help young mentees. And he signed up with one of our mentors and really got so strong in the couple of years he was with us. He helped so many other younger students. He wrote a beautiful application, got accepted, and got a full ride. And folks, I am thrilled to share. He will be graduating this year. So, folks, your ripple effects, your impact can be far reaching. Do not discount what you can do. And that's where it goes back to that 1 hour of our time. It's important. 1 hour of our time can be so precious. Think about it. You could find that neighbors, take some time to talk to them. And it's possible your neighbor may be somebody who's not feeling well, who's sick. You're going out to get your groceries anyway. What if you were to bring the groceries for them? I'm not saying that you got to spend the money on them, but they give you the money, or you can take the money from them later on. Simple things. You could be in front of that grocer who bags for you whole day long through this, how should I say, through this pandemic. They have been there for us, saying a simple thank you. And if they're taking time to change their shift or something is happening, being generous about your time, being kind about it. So I want to share another story. So what happened was, and this is again going back to like designing your life and designing your business. How can you have happiness unless you have fulfillment? And fulfillment happens when knowledge becomes wisdom. So we talked about the Zen story. So when your knowledge gets absorbed, it becomes wisdom. So it's so critical to take yourself on that path. And when fulfillment comes, you will be content, not satisfied. You'll still be marching on to the path, to your goals, to your dreams, to manifest your desires, and not going to stop. The pure, sheer joy and peace that it's going to bring you, nothing else can compensate for that. So going back to the story. So recently I had been in a doctor's office for a test. And what happened was that accidentally the front office had booked 3 people at that time. And there were a couple of patients ahead of me, and they were like, oh, we've been sitting here and all that. And the person who was doing actual test was already, I could see that she was handling it beautifully. And yet I could see that like she was a little bit under stress. That, oh my goodness, the 3 people, I gotta push them through. And then when I went in and I said, it's totally fine. Take your time. And we started having a conversation, laughing, and I thanked her for her services throughout these tough times. And so it's not just enough calling our healthcare workers, our frontline workers, heroes and sheroes. It's important to extend that kindness to them. And I could see that by the time I left, not only I had a good time in doctor's office. Usually you don't think that you'll have a good time in a doctor's office, but had a great time, got my test done, and left with someone leaving feeling not that, oh my goodness, I kept my patients waiting, which was no fault of her own. There was no fault in the front office either, because whatever happened, systems can have glitches, things happen. So bringing that Zen into your life, designing, and that is a deliberate practice. And when I talk about mindfulness, folks, yes, that's what I call it. So what is mindfulness? Mindfulness is a deliberate practice of practicing non-judgment in your given moment, finding that joy in that given moment. And one more thing I've added to that is discernment. And when I talk about discernment, is looking at people, looking at other people, what's happening, looking at what the situation is calling for. And it may be that sometimes you may have no other choice but to give yourself that compassion and self-love, and not being your own worst critic. Because when you're your own worst critic, you're getting in your way, and it's doing nobody any good. So designing your life and designing your business also means identifying your values. And we talk about the values in both the books, The Entrepreneur's Garden, completely from a business perspective, and Expert to Influencer from the perspective of building your influence and creating a massive impact. So that's very critical, because when you know your values, those become the charter of your life. They become the compass. Okay, what decision should I make? For example, if you come from a place of that, I'm going to be compassionate this week towards all the people. So then you would recognize if somebody is rushed, you let them go in front of you in the grocery line, they're rushing through, and then you'll see that, yes, they're rushing through, but they usually look back and give you a smile. So finding those small things and making a difference and bringing that joy in every single day, every single moment, because the gift of life that we have is so precious, folks. There's nothing more precious than that. And it's about sharing and having that joy with others. So, folks, we have talked about quite a few things, and I would like to share one thing about building your influence is there are 3 stages to it. One is designing it. We talked about it, but how do you design your life? How do you design your business? Through values, and what does it look like? Then the next step comes in building it. And when we talk about building, think about long-term gain. Don't look at the short-term cost. Because when I talked to you about my client who was the accountant, if she had looked at short-term cost, oh my God, I am paying so much money to the bookkeepers. How am I able to grow my business? I will not have money to invest in my business. I'm just paying out everything. But what it did was it freed her up. She could see how she could find more time for her clients, make them more successful. And because her clients became more successful, they were referring people to her. And now the situation is she can't take more people on. All the times she has become very selective, selects only the elite few or exclusive few who are willing to do the work. So that's the second phase, building it. And the third is living it. And when I talk about living it is going from doing to being. And when you go from doing to the being state, in the doing state, you're still mastering it. And it's well, if Mike, you want to join us for the last few minutes, that'll be great.
Let's see. Is it not showing my video?
No. It's okay. That's fine. We can just have a conversation.
All right. Well, StreamYard is not letting my video show for some reason, but so be it. Here we are. Let's see.
Well, folks, tech happens. Tech happens, and
all right. Well, good to be with you today, and very excited to connect. As always, you bring wisdom and joy to the world, and was just enjoying what you were just sharing. So it's such a pleasure.
Oh, thank you for joining us, Mike. And folks, Mike is a phenomenal person that I've had the pleasure to meet, have had a couple of conversations with him. So Mike, why don't we just kind of jump in and dive in? I know you help people design their lives and businesses. Give us your perspective.
Yeah, good question. When we're looking to find our purpose and our path and design our life, it all starts with intentionality, but intentionality in a little bit different way than we think. Like Socrates, his core principle was to know thyself as the beginning of all wisdom. And when you look at this world today, we're like studying culture, we're studying this, we're studying that, we're getting a good degree, we're trying to find a good job. Well, that's good. You got to know what the market wants and what the world needs, but you also really deeply got to know yourself. Dee Hock, the founder of Visa, he said after he sold his equity and retired from Visa, he started studying leadership, and he found that the very best leaders in the world spent more than 50% of their time leading themselves. So it all begins with that self-leadership, and it's one of the hardest things to do. Arguably, it's easier to lead others than it is to lead oneself. And so I think that's where it begins.
Mm-hmm. That's a very powerful answer. So let's say people begin leading. How would you advise they go about it?
Good question. So I have my first book coming out. It's called The Genius Within. And it really was a quest to answer that question. And the question around like, hey, where do I begin? And for me, what I've found is it's 4 core quadrants. And the first one is your unique abilities. Like, where do you really kick butt? Where are you absolutely phenomenal? And then also, where do you stink? Like, we all stink in certain areas. And leadership and wisdom, a big piece of it is knowing, hey, this is where I stink and this is where I'm great, and I'm going to put myself in an exceptionally right position. So when I take people through the finding their unique talents, it's 5 different personality tests. Why 5 different personality tests? Because they all share a different angle, a different part of the pattern. And when you accumulate and assimilate all the different information you get, now you got more layers. And you've got the greatest accumulation of clues about who on earth you are. Then the second step is find your key relationships and identify the clusters of people that you love being around, that that expand you. And then the third, your unique life experiences where you have like this shows up. This shows up consistently. Something about these sorts of experiences indicate, they give you clues. Then the fourth area is your values and passions. So when you put all those things together, you have the greatest accumulation of clues about who on earth you are and what on earth you're meant to do.
Very powerful. You talked about passion, and Mike, so many times passion runs out. What can people do to keep their passion burning?
I was just talking with a young 23-year-old, newly graduated from college earlier today, and she didn't have as much passion in her work. And what had happened is she had stopped being curious. She had stopped challenging herself. And so it begins with, hey, what am I curious about? How can I challenge myself? If I keep challenging and stretching and feeding my curiosity, guess what? My passion's going to expand. My passion's going to get better and bigger and deeper. So that's where it begins, is like, curiosity. A friend of mine wrote How to Think Like Leonardo da Vinci, a great book, and he said there's 7 principles of Da Vinci, of his genius, and the first one was curiosita. So he's endlessly curious about every aspect of life, nature, helicopters, even though they didn't exist back then, painting, art. He was curious about life. So that's where it begins.
Oh, that's very powerful. Curiosity. Now that leads us that, okay, you have your passion, you keep it burning. How can you focus it in a laser way that it can help you build your design life and help you not only design it and build your life, but your business as well?
It's a great question. The first thing that comes to mind is doing, as you go through those 4 key areas, then you assimilate, you interpret, you ask, you also test. As you start getting data about who you are, then you ask the people that know you best, hey, is this true about me? Ask your spouse or significant other, hey, your friends, your close friends, your clients, or your boss, or your fellow employees, whatever. Is this true? What else would you add? And you start creating a deeper area of openness in your conversations, and you want to get real feedback. It's almost like you want other people to become your mirror. And if they can become your mirror, now you can make better and smarter and more fulfilling decisions. And then you also, if you're looking for how to monetize my gifting, well, then you start asking, you test. It's really testing the marketplace, testing to see, hey, do they want this? And does this have value? What is it? That what would you pay for this or that?
Absolutely. As you're taking the pain points of your prospects or of your tribe and coming from a place of serving, that, hey, my prospect is staying up at night and this is the solution. So tell us a little bit more about your book and when it will be out and how would people be able to get hold of it?
Yeah, good question. So, as you go through this life, it's like one of the things I encourage people to do is almost have like a notebook about yourself. And it may sound self-focused. In a way it is, but it's more about you figuring out your deepest area of impact and your deepest area of service. So every time you get a piece of feedback, every time you get some clues, every time you learn something, write it down. Start reviewing your notes. Start seeing, hey, this is what I'm made for. Or one of the I was coaching an actress today, and I said, hey, one of the things I wanted her to do is break down on one side of the paper, write down everything that brings life. Just write life at the top of the page, and everything from the smallest things, whether it's, hey, if she likes to bake muffins for her children, and then on the backside, write death at the top of the page. And then as you're going about your week, write down everything that you're doing and categorize it. Does this bring me death, or does this bring me life? And the death quadrants, those are the ones that you want to eliminate and get rid of and move off your plate. But that's one of the first activities I often have a lot of my clients do, is like start defining things. This brings me life, or this brings me death. And then you start, like, you can feel where your roadblocks are subconsciously or energetically.
Oh, so powerful. And I kind of like, do you have a place where people can go find if there's a waiting list for your book? Or
Oh yeah. So it's called the geniuswithinbook.com, and that's the site for the wait list. And MikeZeller.com is my main website as well. But those are the main spots to find out more about it if you're looking to find your purpose and how to monetize your purpose and your gifting.
I'm sure it's going to be stellar. Of course, folks, I'll be definitely getting a copy for myself. And Mike's a phenomenal person. You'll be able to get to learn a lot. So make sure that you visit those websites. And can you share where they can find you as far as social media is concerned?
Yeah, I'm on Instagram as the Mike Zeller, and Michael Zeller on Facebook and LinkedIn. And always would love to hear from you guys and love to serve however I can.
Fantastic. Thank you so much, Mike, for joining us. And folks, we will be talking next week. Until then, be well, take care, and thank you, Rebel, for making the show possible.
Thank you for being part of Beyond Confidence with your host, Divya Parekh. We hope you have learned more about how to start living the life you want. Each week on Beyond Confidence, you hear stories of real people who have experienced growth by overcoming their fears and building meaningful relationships. During Beyond Confidence, Divya Parekh shares what happened to her when she stepped out of her comfort zone to work directly with people across the globe. She not only coaches people how to form heart connections, but also transform relationships to mutually beneficial partnerships as they strive to live the life they want. If you are ready to live the life you want and leverage your strengths, learn more at www.divyaparekh.com. And you can connect with Divya at contact@divyaparekh.com. We look forward to you joining us next week, Monday, 8 p.m. Eastern Time.